Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Hmong Woman podcast. I'm Ariel.
I'm Dochi.
And I'm Emily. And our filming is a little bit different today just because I don't want to get these ladies sick or anything. So, keeping them healthy by filming on Zoom.
Yeah. So, what have you guys been up to, and maybe what have you guys been doing over the past week?
Oh my gosh. For me, I've just been really focused on work lately. So I'm not gonna lie, I am gonna toot my horn just because that's been my biggest focus since starting my new job. As tiring as it is, I've really been loving and enjoying recruiting. And so I've been hitting all of my goals and the milestones I want. I've been getting a lot of good feedback. And so as tired as I am from that, I'm just really happy. So that's the biggest part of my life right now. But anyways, less about me, more about y'all.
How about you, Emily?
I've been up to nothing. I'm just trying to recover. Uh, One only new thing is that I moved, as you both know. So, I had to move twice, unfortunately.
Right.
So I think I just got sick from the move. So, just resting is needed. What about you, Ariel?
Do you still have boxes? And
Yeah, well, most of my stuff is in storage. Um, and I just unpacked a few of my things yesterday. So not I don't think I will ever be done unpacking or packing, moving. So, yeah.
I get it. Well, hopefully, you're able to make yourself a little bit more comfortable over the last couple days and moving forward. Um, yeah, I went to go see the new Jurassic Park movie this week. It was okay. If you watch it, you'll get it, but it didn't really make sense to me. But I mean, I enjoyed it. I think I would just warn people it's a really slow start.
Mm.
And I would just say that, like, I don't know, I'd probably give it like 6, 7 out of 10 stars. Like, it just was not worth it. I don't suggest it. Wait until it comes out like Netflix or something, guys.
Was it the storyline? Was it the acting? Was it a little bit of both?
It was a little bit of both. It was just really slow at the start. And then yeah, I just don't like, you couldn't really understand, like, the plot of it, and I felt like the plot just didn't really make sense either because it's interesting, but, like, if you watch it, they have, like, genetically modified, dinos, and then, like, they're on this whole mission, but the mission to me didn't make sense because 'cause I'm like, "That doesn't genetically make sense," but I don't wanna ruin it and spoil it for people, you just gotta go watch it.
Yeah, because this is a continuation from the last series with Chris Pratt, right? So it's like after that, I mean, everybody, not everybody's seen it, but it's been out for a few years where they like move some of the dinosaurs onto mainland. Is it a continuation of that from that point on?
Right. Right.
Gotcha.
It's interesting because they brought, like you said, dinosaurs to mainland, and they're here with us, like, in zoos and stuff, but
Yeah.
then the special oh, go ahead.
No, I was saying I was trying to remember what that storyline was, but yes, no, go ahead.
Yeah, so some of the dinos are here with us, but then the special ones are on the equator, and they're the harder ones to get. It's confusing. I won't go on a tangent, but, like, yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend seeing it, honestly, and
Yeah.
I think the only other big thing is, like, I've been 1 month into my new corporate role, which I really enjoyed, and yeah, it's definitely a big change, but I think one thing I've learned about myself is I really like structure and I don't mind repetition, so it's actually taken off a lot of stress off of me, so
That's good. I know you were on the job hunt for just something new for some time and you were trying to look for the right fit. And I'm glad that it seems to be working out that way for you.
yeah, yeah, so
Yeah.
That's so exciting. Yeah.
Well, and not to harp on the Jurassic series, but that's actually disappointing to hear because I like Jonathan Bailey. So I will wait for it to come out on Netflix instead.
Same. I heard, okay, slight tie side thing here, but have you guys seen the new, what is it? Stitch? Lilo and Stitch?
I did, yeah, like a month ago.
Did you like it?
It was okay. It's different, I will say, from the original, like, cartoon series.
I forgot if it was you guys that had mentioned it, but I just keep on hearing people say, not exactly what they'd expected, and also not recommended in theaters at least. So I guess I
Mhm.
have two movies I'll watch on Netflix when it comes out.
It's worth the wait, just yeah, or not worth the what is called, hype, yeah.
Mm.
Great. Well, today's topic is one that runs deep for a lot of us: intergenerational trauma, parental wounds, and how they show up in our relationships. Many of us were raised by parents who were doing their best, and often while they carried their own unprocessed pain, survival stories, and cultural silence. And what we don't always realize is when the pain is left unspoken, it doesn't disappear, it just gets passed down. And so in this episode, we're really going to unpack what those parental wounds can look like. We're obviously not here to blame, but we are here to break cycles. And so whether you've been doing this work for years or you just started to realize how much your childhood shaped you, this space is for you. So let's talk about it. Um, so, what is both of your understanding of what a mother wound and a father wound is?
You put that opening so well, Ariel. When I was researching and looking into this a little bit more, because I'm not gonna lie, in my childish way of, I uh, defining what a mother or father wound is just like the hurt that you gave me when I was a kid. And I'm still mad about it. That's in short how I looked at the question, but then I did go about researching it just to give it a bit of a more concrete background. And so, my understanding from that research is a mother or father wound is either emotional or psychological distress that we carry from childhood that could have been brought on through actions from our mother or father, such as like abuse or emotional neglect. So that's what I found.
From what I remember and what I found is that, like, specifically the distinct difference is that, like, right, father wounds is known as, like, daddy issues, like, that's kind of the pop culture saying for it, but it's really just, like, describing, like, the emotional and physical, like, absence of a dad, which is why, like, people with daddy issues look to, like, fill that hole. Whereas, like, the distinct difference with the mother wound or just, like, parental trauma essentially is what it is just that the mom was just not emotionally mature or emotionally present in times where you needed it, and so it's kinda like, I don't know, some of those examples that you guys may have seen on, like, TikTok is like, "Why is my mom bullying me?" Like, she's always bullied me from a very young age, like, so that's, like, a prime example of, like, what a mother wound could look like, so those are the distinct differences that I've noted from, talking about parental trauma and, like, the things that they do to you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think when I first was thinking about this, I automatically thought of dysfunction. And so for me, I think really understanding what a mother and father wound is really around your unmet needs and the dysfunction that we had in childhood that basically followed us into adulthood. So, but yeah, I really appreciate both your definitions and your in-depth explanation, Emily. Um, any of you two can start off, but do you have a mother and father wound? And when did you come to realize that?
I didn't really come to understand that I had a mother or father wound until after I divorced. A lot happened like mid 20s for me. My brain just popped open and everything spilled out like a can of beans. And for me, I don't think I ever understood that the things my mom or my dad were doing had affected me that much and building the character that I'd become into. So, like, for example, and this isn't to again blame my mom or my dad in any way, shape, or form, but I think it was also that they didn't realize they were doing these things, the being overly critical. And I feel their sense is their way of being supportive is actually them being my biggest critic. And you know, with that teaching me how to be overly self-conscious as a person. And just resulting into a person that needs a lot of external validation. And so I feel that I grew up as a big people pleaser, always looking for validation when, whether it be from like my own family, my friends, or even outsiders where I don't really know them well. I feel that I was hypersensitive to people's actions and assumed a lot from their motions, whatever they did, their facial expressions, trying to figure out like, are you mad? Is there something going on? And instead of like even asking, I just in response right away, I would feel the need to do something to make them happy. And I feel that that came a lot from my interactions with my mom growing up, because I could never read her emotions correctly. And I feel that she was not as emotionally available as she could have been, for me as a kid. And again, that's not to blame her because now that I'm older, I also realize like she was so young when she had me. She was a teenager. How do you realize how to be emotionally available for your child when you are also a child yourself? So in short, that's how I've seen that manifest in me. How it's affected my relationships and maintaining them is I think I've really just, again, become hypersensitive to the people I'm with. And if I get a feeling that I might have potentially offended you or like I'm overthinking is a huge thing and I overthink it. I found that I'm very quick to cut people, especially if they're not like really close family members. And it's not intentional and that I hate you or I don't like you. It's more of the reverse if I don't feel that I'm worthy of your time. And let me just make things easier for you. And so I'm very avoidant in my relationships with people, whether that be with my friends or with like new people and meeting acquaintances. If I feel like I've slightly wronged you, instead of fixing the situation, I'd rather just like I want to not fix it, if that makes sense. So that's what I've come to realize like quarter century of my life.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to that and it'll resonate with them because same as you, I think like I didn't really realize how much of impact like my mom and dad played on me. And it's crazy, but like the way your parents talk to you, that's literally your inner voice too. And a lot of people don't realize that. So for me, like I feel like everyone has a mother and father wound, and I just want to applaud you, Dochi, for being transparent and honest about that. Um, I don't think I so for me, like I grew up in a very strict house where like um I couldn't really leave my house without my parents' permission, obviously, but, like, I didn't have the freedom to hang out with friends, and I wasn't able to go to sleepovers. So that really made it hard for me to trust my own sense and to trust my own gut, and, um, I would say maybe my early 20s was when I started realizing, like, my sense of normal is not the same as other people's. Um, and that was more through, like, listening through podcasts, listening to other people's experience of how they grew up in terms of not having super controlling parents. Um, and so through that experience, I sort of figured out, like, maybe there is more to this, like, that I need to sort of sit with and also decide if it's still aligning to what I want for my life. And so for me, I really want to say that my parents both really had a really strong sense of emotional absence. So growing up, there was a lack of emotional safety. And it's sad to say, but I honestly felt emotionally alone even when both my parents were present. And so that really led to me as a child being able to have a lot of difficulty in processing my emotions. And along with that, like, and that's the thing too, right? Like in the movies and in the books that you read, parents are there to help regulate you and to also hold your hand and tell you like everything's okay. But I think for me growing up, I just never really heard words of affirmation and I never really felt emotionally supported. And so it took me a really long time to recognize that gap. and to also advocate for myself and to also go to therapy because I think one of the hardest lessons I've learned is you really need to learn how to be your biggest cheerleader, and you also have to learn how to control that inner voice. Um, I think another thing too that I automatically thought of was my people pleasing tendencies. So when your parents don't give a lot of affirmation or you don't feel emotionally supported, then sometimes you can find yourself feeling like you need to overwork or you need to people please in order to feel valued. And so growing up, that's sort of where that perfectionism comes into play of where, again, like I grew up in a really strict household and I needed permission and validation to do things. And so for me, I grew up with a tendency to be really overcritical of myself, whether that was with my grades, whether that was with how I dressed, whether it was how I showed up in my friendships. And I think one thing that I have worked through is being overly critical of myself, and then also just realizing that a lot of my expectations of myself can be a little unrealistic because they're super high. And so a big part of that is from my parents, unfortunately, pressuring me with that really high expectations of success and then never really allowing for room for vulnerability. So,
Well, thank you, Ariel, for sharing that as well. I mean, that's a very, vulnerable perspective to share. And you did not have to, right? I think a lot of what the three of us are saying is like, you don't have to share what you don't want to share. But we're doing it because we want to show folks that like it happens to sometimes the best of us. Um, and it happens to more people than you think. And I think that um these like mother and father wounds really just speak to like attachment styles that we experience as children and continue to influence us as adults. And so, like the four different attachment styles, which is secure attachment, anxious attachment, oh, I'm forgetting the other two, avoidant attachment, and disorganized attachment, right? Each one of those is really is really an experience that children face or experience with their parents when they're younger that really does impact them as adults. And I know that for myself, right? I think a part of it was that a lot of it was very anxious and disorganized attachment with my parents, right? And so they were there, and when they were there, it was very overbearing. And when they weren't there, they just weren't there. Part of that lens comes in, like, I totally understand, they're navigating a whole new world, they're having to learn how to acclimate, they're having to learn how to assimilate, and they're raising children in a country that they didn't grow up in, and they have to understand that their children are literally growing in a different culture. And so, how this is manifested in my life is that I find myself mothering people because that's what I grew up as, like, the caretaker and, like, you're expected to do this, and this. And I mean, I'm proud of myself. I'm gonna toot my own horn because I got into therapy pretty early where it's like, I'm no longer gonna mother people. It is what it is at the end of the day. Like, if you, experience something in a certain way, and I'm just gonna wait for you, like, this is the older sister me. I'm just gonna wait for you to come to me. Like, if you have a misunderstanding, if you are angry, if you're sad and you're not ready to talk about it, you're not ready to talk about it. You come to me whenever you're ready. Right. And so learning to detach from trying to people please and trying to mother and trying to or even just like creating friendships and like diving into deep in the first end where it's like, oh my gosh, these people are my friends, like they're my best friends. These people I'm gonna be very open with, coming into that with a little bit of a slower approach. Those are all things that I've learned throughout the years to just do. So I think yeah, at the end of the day, it speaks to these attachment styles that we bring into our adulthood. Um, and working through it is continuous. There's never an end point of like, oh, I'm healed now. I can do it. There's always going to be something new. You realize you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I responded that way because of how my parents is. Like, I think the new one that I just discovered is when when I'm like doing something for the family because we all discussed it, and then all of a sudden they're like, no, we never just we didn't say that we were gonna help. And so in my mind, I'm triggered. I'm like, oh my god, this is how my mother felt And so instead of lashing out, which is how it may have happened in the past of like, you guys said this, you do this, blah, blah, blah. It's okay, it's fine. Misunderstanding this time around. But next time, like I can't put in as much effort because I put in this much effort. So that's one observation there.
Yeah, I definitely think I'm really proud of you for knowing that you needed therapy soon because that wasn't the same in my case. But I think therapy has really helped me a ton actually, and I would advocate that for anyone because I feel like everyone needs therapy. So,
Yeah, and it wasn't even like going to therapy was because of this. I went for a completely different reason. And then I'm like, oh, these all built into the primary reason why I went. So, yeah, definitely. I think therapy helps you just unpack so many layers of things that you don't think impact your life, and it really does.
yeah, and so for both of you, how do you interact with a parent who's wounded you?
There's been a shift in how I interact with my parents. I when I was younger, I almost like did not even want to talk to my mom anymore. I was envious of people who had a really good relationship with their moms. And I feel like I have to always put out a disclaimer that my mom was not a bad mom. I think we butt heads a lot, and it had a lot to do with her being young, and also I was a kid, like I could not understand why she would do the things she did, and very similar to your upbringing, Ariel. She was very strict. So was my dad, but it was like good cop, bad cop. My mom would have to communicate the no's to me when I felt like it was her making the sole decisions, but I'm sure together, like as parents, you guys make the decisions together. But I think I put a lot of that on my mom's back because she was the one not letting me go to the sleepovers I really wanted to go to. And I had a lot of resentment towards her because I felt like because of her decision to keep me from that, it kept me from a lot of experiences I should have had. And that's changed a lot now that I'm older and getting a bigger lens at the world and understanding why she did things that she did. Um, in those days, and also some of the actions that she has done and the way we had interacted. I, again, I would go about like avoiding her. I really wouldn't talk to my parents unless I absolutely needed to or had to, and the way I used to describe the way I interacted with my parents were it's almost military like. Um, if I were to like have a conversation with them, it was always about school, about work, and what I'm accomplishing. And I almost had like no intonation to my voice. It was like, yes, I'm going to school right now. I'm doing this. It's very dull. I felt very boring. We couldn't have a real conversation. And I think my divorce helped me understand a lot that I did not need to try to be perfect. Honestly, it's kind of like 180 me, which is not great. I'm trying to find the balance in between that right now. In present day, my interactions with my parents are a lot, I think, healthier. It's a lot better. At least I know for myself, I think for them too, because in the middle of a conversation, if I'm recognizing some of their actions as being like maybe critical, like, why are you being hypercritical about this? Like, this is what I'm doing. Can you just be supported? I've said that to my mom before. Not so much my dad, but we have a slightly different relationship and our communication is a little bit different, but I appreciate the both of them for always being so open to hearing me when I'm like stopping them in their tracks. Cause I know not everybody, especially being Hmong, is privileged to be able to speak like that to their parents. Because a lot of times they see it as like being disrespectful. Like, "Minyo, achi chipotle, why are you gonna say that to me? Like, do you know that I like gave birth?" My parents don't say that to me. And so if I'm talking with my mom about something or some kind of goal I have or wherever I'm at in life, and she starts being like hypercritical about you should do this, you should do that, you can't do it like this. I'll just ask her, like, can you just be supportive, mom? And she'll stop and go, okay. And I've really come to appreciate that. I think it's helped guide us into having better conversations and just having conversations in general.
I love that for you that you are at a point in your life where you can go to your mom and be like, "Can't you just be supportive?" And she's like, "Okay, yeah." 'Cause I just, like, can't imagine the people who don't get that and they want that, you know? So that is really awesome. Like, happy for you about that. I know, like, for me, that it was very rough. We had a very rough patch for a while where I texted my siblings. I'm like, "I'm not gonna answer mom's calls. I'm not gonna answer dad's calls. I'm not gonna text any of them back just because, you know, I'm gonna admit, like, things were said on both ends that I regret, my parents regret, and we are all actively working on, like, healing that relationship, and I know that we've gotten a lot better at saying, "Okay, well, I just need a minute." Like, I just need a minute to, like, understand what you were saying or, like, "Hey, why did you say it like that? Like, couldn't you have just said it like this?" And so, um, I know that right now it's not a perfect dynamic, but it is something that we are working towards, but I mean, at the end of the day, there's still times too where they're like, "I never did that. I don't recall doing that to you as a kid." And I'm like, "Okay, sure." Um, but at the end of the day, as an adult now, like, our relationship isn't the best. I'm not gonna lie and say that it's the best, but it's also better than it was a few years ago due to that effort from both ends.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I appreciate that. I think for me, I think it's complicated because I'm the oldest of 5, and so I think since I have younger siblings, I try to have a positive relationship with my parents, so I've never cut out my parents, but I think it's just hard to navigate as someone who actively has parents who doesn't share the same interest in being heavily involved in my life. So I think I've really had to learn how to navigate, not being super involved in my parents' life because they don't share that same effort. And so for me at least, like, when I'm dealing with people who are either emotionally unavailable, I think there's, obviously that time where you want to build on things with them, but you're just there in the gray space because you know they won't return that effort. And so I think for me, a really big part of my early 20s, even till now, is learning how to reparent yourself. Because if I'm being fully transparent, growing up, I knew well, growing up, I learned that there's more than just two emotions of being just mad and sad. Like, therapy was the first place where I learned that there was, like, a feelings wheel, and I was like, "Holy shit, like, this is interesting." Like, I didn't know well, I knew that other emotions existed, I just didn't know how to better communicate that. And so therapy has really allowed me to communicate better and also to explain my feelings more, and that's something that I'm really proud of, and my people-pleasing tendencies, I wanna say I worked through that alone even before, like, therapy, but, like, I was a really naturally rebellious child. Like, I didn't really like being told what to do, and along with that, I was someone who, like, just wouldn't take no for an answer. And so I feel like since I know that about myself, I've been a really heavily grounded person my entire life. And so I stopped feeling like I needed to be valued by overworking and people pleasing for other people at a really young age. And that's something that can't really credit to anyone else but myself because I felt like a lot of how I was a lot of how I grew up, was really around trying to what's the right word? Like, tiptoe around people, and sometimes you felt like you were, on glass with people. And so really unlearning that, like, that's not normal and really getting over that people pleasing was a really big shift in my life where I could really enjoy being myself and feeling a lot more grounded in my life. So so, how have you seen this manifest and how you create and maintain your relationships?
I already spoke on this too. Just it was really I was a really heavily avoidant person. So I tend to cut ties with people pretty quickly. Mostly because I felt as though I was an issue in their life. And so instead of me fixing myself, I was like, hey, I'm just going to remove myself. And that was a big part in my life where I had to recognize, like, to maintain and build healthy relationships, you have to, go with the flow and communicate these things because communication is not my strongest suit, as people know. So I think that's how it's manifested into my life and how I maintain my relationships. Realizing how my parents had once communicated with me and how that's pretty much built my basis of how I communicate. I have to now unlearn all those things and figure out, as you said earlier, Ariel, how to reparent myself to do better and maintain healthier, better relationships than that.
Yeah, I think when I was thinking about this to myself, um, I've seen myself shift over the years. And so in relationships, it's definitely shown up in the topic of like people pleasing for me. So I've talked about it before, but like in high school, I'd be the one always apologizing. I'd ask others what they needed and what they wanted just because I felt like I needed to be more likable and non confrontational. And so feeling like I didn't belong or feeling like I couldn't be my authentic self was really hard for me. And so it really impacted my way of how I was showing up in my relationships. And I think it was obviously through my rebellious self and like learning through trial and error, like what I wanted and what I needed. I was more able to show up as my authentic self and really advocate for what I wanted to see from other people and what I needed for myself. And so I think I've learned over the years that, like, it's really important for me to directly communicate and also in maintaining relationships, I think it's also important that, um I think another really important thing is that I've really learned how to develop strong boundaries because when you grow up in a strict Hmong household, boundaries are non-existent. And so I didn't know what boundaries were, and I always found myself overextending myself and not expecting the same thing back. And so I think that really comes from, at least from my end, where I felt like I needed to act a certain way to be loved or I had to prove myself. And so that for me over the last couple of years, I've had to unlearn and set boundaries around. I no longer showed up and hoped to be praised for things. And then I learned to also practice discernment in my life in terms of the people I kept around and the things that I wanted to do in terms of like life decisions. So that's sort of how I've seen it manifest and how I've sort of, like, worked through those issues over the last couple of years.
I learned so much from both you and Emily every single time. Like, even though we're doing these podcasts together to share with the viewers, the followers, and everything, I'm always learning something new. And I like to implement these things into my life because and who doesn't want to do better for themselves, right? So I appreciate you always sharing those steps that you have taken and how that's kind of like shifted your journey in your life. And same with you as well, Emily, because I'm not gonna lie, like steal a little bit every time, like, oh, that's interesting, or I can relate to that. And I have not noticed that in my own life. And I always feel like I'm like a good season behind, at least a good season or two behind the both of you guys, and not in a bad way, but it's more like, oh my God, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Maybe that's something that I can shift into doing, or, like the people pleasing part is something that I'm still healing through, working through, but it was really bad in just season one of the Hmong Woman podcast because I was so fresh into learning how to unlearn that. And a lot of the things I did, I didn't even realize they were people pleasing tendencies either, until like you guys were speaking upon it. Like, oh my God, that's people pleasing. I thought that was just normal like behavior. So that's what I wanted to say about that. I just do appreciate so much you guys sharing all the things you have learned um, along the way in your journeys.
And this probably ties in perfectly to our next question, but how do you approach the world? So problems, conflict, good news, and praise.
But yeah, I know that it's an issue for me, especially in the workplace. I ask that any recognition of me be removed because I just don't. One, it's just my private life. I don't want to be celebrating my birthday with any of my coworkers. I enjoy working with them, but that's it. But even like praise for projects, I know that's very hard for me because, like Ariel, I grew up thinking that I didn't deserve it, like, or like that I had to work so hard for it, and if it didn't meet my expectations, I didn't deserve praise. So that's one thing I'm working on is I don't like when people praise me because I'm like, it's literally just work that you do. Like, what's so different about it? Um, but it's something that I've, definitely done a lot better with. Um, and I just think that how I'm approach the world with it is just what I said earlier is like, I'm just trying to be someone who's understanding and reassuring of where you're coming from. And if I don't understand it or if I read it a different way, I will always be like, hey, like, this is how I read it and understood it. Here's can you correct me if I'm wrong? Or if there really was nothing to it, I'm like, no, like this is just how it was meant. And I'm reassuring you, like, there's literally nothing else to it. And so I think that's how I now approach the world instead of approaching it so anxiously or like hoping that people see me in a certain light. I mean, I said this to you two ladies before. At the end of the day, I just don't care. Which sounds very uncaring, but I just don't hold or let their opinions hold a weight on me to be able to move forward.
I always approached the world in a very anxious manner. It was always about, you know, how do I do this so that so and so can be happy about it? Or that so that these people are pleased about it. I never really thought about the how do I approach this just so that I can be pleased with it? Because the fact is that I can't not make everybody happy about what I'm doing. And that shift in mindset has allowed for me to, I think, grow more as a person and then also change the way I do interact with, problems, conflicts, or praise and any of that sort. Um, Once upon a time, I was really bad at accepting any kind of praise, any kind of compliments, any good news that had me tied into it. Um, and similar to Emily, I didn't even like recognizing my birthdays. I don't know why it had made me so uncomfortable at a very young age. I still remember in like this was middle school. We had I don't know if your school had this, but we had like a news show for our middle school, and so it was like basically two middle schoolers. They would like broadcast it. We would wheel in the big old TVs, and then they'll like announce the birthdays for the day. And I would purposely try to like go to the bathroom or not be there when they would announce it because I didn't want people to focus on me. And at that time, I remember I would do that, but I could never understand like why. And then I also realized like growing up, I disliked celebrating my birthday. Um, it's odd because I'm still working through understanding that piece. And so for the longest time I would make excuses about why I would not want to celebrate it, or it got to a point where I would deactivate my Facebook during my birthday so that people would not post on my wall. And again, at this time, I'm not exactly sure why it's so excessive in that sense, where it's literally just a birthday, right? The happy birthday wishes are not bad or anything, and it's a part of me that I'm still working through. But I give that example because I just don't like to be at the spotlight, which is very contradictory with what we are here at the Moment podcast. And it's something that I'm having to accept that I have to learn how to love and accept myself. And I think it's just a lot of self hatred that I've built throughout the years and self criticism where I don't feel like I'm worthy of all that. And it's extended so far to the point of me not even want to recognize the day that I was birthed. Um, and so in today's world, if I'm receiving any kind of praise, I knock into my consciousness and say, like, okay, Doji, it's okay to just say thank you. Like, oh, thank you. That's something I had to teach myself because way too many times in the past, if somebody did praise me or give me any kind of good compliments, I would just say, "Oh no, like it's not that big of a deal." I'll try to brush it off, try to cut the conversation short. And a great example of this was just actually with work. A lot's been going really well, and I like to not push the things I do um to the spotlight. And I had this conversation actually with Emily earlier on where I forgot exactly what you said, but I was just like, I have to be able to recognize myself and, you know, put myself in the forefront. And in order to reach those goals, I have to be in the limelight and I have to be okay with that. And it's not a bad thing. Like if recognition and praise is given and I'm at the table, I should take it. And so I'm slowly doing those things, and there's a lot of positives that have been coming out of it. So I'm slowly becoming comfortable with those kind of things. But that's my current approach of that and my current journey with approaching problems, conflicts, praise, or any kind of good news in my life.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think that'll resonate with a lot of folks who've gone through similar situations and have a hard time accepting that praise and like leaning into their authentic self. So praise for me, I didn't see it in a healthy manner in the past. And I think it was because I thought, again, with the people pleasing, is that you had to be perfect in order to be praised. And so for me, one of the biggest hurdles I had to work through mentally was reparenting myself and understanding that I don't have to wait for other people to praise me. And I also don't have to wait for the big milestones. And so a lot of what I do every at the end of every week is usually I'll look like over the last 5, 6, 7 days and be like, what am I actually proud of myself for doing? And like, what can I actually do better? And so I think that practice has really allowed me to not only give myself the kudos that like I know I deserve and I need, but it also like sort of eliminates the praise that I look for in other people. And then I think the only other thing is like the conflict and the problems, especially in like family, is I think it's really hard, at least for me, to navigate it. It was hard for me to navigate it as an adult because I didn't grow up seeing how conflict was handled. I saw obviously the dysfunctional side of it and other parts of my family, but like we never really saw healthy communication and healthy like resolution. For me, I think it's been really helpful in being able to sit in the discomfort and not just wanting to fix things quickly because I'm uncomfortable. And so now I can actively walk away. I can revisit issues and then I can also take time to process my thoughts and feelings and process on how I can show up and revisit that issue with that person. So that's sort of how I've navigated and learned and approached the world now. So how do we think this impacts among individuals and families?
I think I went a little bit of a different route than what you 2 ladies would have gone, but I'm just gonna go with it. Um, which is that similar to what I said earlier with attachment styles, right? And how our parents interact with us when we're younger, is that it does impact how you as an adult turn out. And so I'm just referencing a study. There's not many new studies that have come out since then, but this was written by Shani Zhang for the University of Wisconsin, their grad program, and they were essentially they had conducted a correlational study about whether attachment styles are correlated with adolescent delinquent behavior. And they found, obviously, there are very many limitations to the study, but one of the findings that they found is that, of course, parents who had a more secure attachment style with their child reported less delinquent behavior than parents who had a disorganized or an anxious attachment style with their child, who then was more likely to participate in delinquent behavior. And I think that that can be said across the board for Hmong families. And one of the things that I appreciated that the study talked about, which is what I mentioned too, is that the parents are also working through their own, like, lens of, like, trying to assimilate and acculturate into America, and so that highly impacted their ability to attach with their children, and so I think that I've obviously seen I can't say for all families, I've seen very many Hmong families who, like, have had great healthy attachment styles, and, like, they get along, they're like bussies, and then there are some families that just aren't, so I think that it's not just bubbled in within our culture, but I do think that, immigration exacerbates a lot of what families may experience, especially if it's negative, um, so, yeah.
Yeah, I like what you said, Emily. I think, at least to me, that made a lot of sense. Because if you grew up in a household where you don't feel as securest, you don't feel emotionally heard, you feel like you can't, obviously reach out to your parents, you're gonna find other outlets to express that. So, that makes complete sense to me.
I didn't have too much for this, which is why I was like, okay, maybe you'll have something better. But I love that you shared a study with us, Emily. I don't know why I didn't look into studies when I was answering this. I think automatically I was just like, trying to think about the families that I know and I've run into and think of like, oh, how has, their parents or the stories they've shared with me, right? uh, Potentially affected them and their interactions with people, when I'm talking to other friends or other family members. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, remember, when you're just sharing stories with each other. Remember when we were growing up, my mom did this and that. My gosh, I hated this. And you can kind of see how that pattern led into them being who they are or why they choose to react the way they do to, I don't know, certain situations. And so I appreciate your study. Who did you say was by?
Shaney Zhang, 2002.
Oh,
I'm not able to confirm if it's seminal research or if there's been new research taken out, but that's the only thing I could find.
I think that would actually be really interesting to read through and look at as well. But I do feel that, of course, mother father wounds are going to affect us regardless whether you're Hmong or not, and within the you know your individual self and within family situations, as you guys are already both mentioned, everybody attaches differently. And when I'm looking at specifically in my family, referencing for this, I think of how I grew up, and now as an adult, I'm seeing how my baby brother is and how he interacts with my mom. I think I'm taking that lens and kind of bringing it to the masses. And I think it's giving me a little more empathy towards people, and understanding, okay, I not I think, but I've definitely been too harsh, not just on myself, but on the world in general. And how people are reacting to certain situations. Our parents, not on purpose, have done a lot to us in our upbringing and how perfect or imperfect that we are, and how much we accept all of that altogether, right? And so I think that those mother father wounds, for those who are probably not even aware they have it, I think, if anything, I hope this episode can help them to think about, like, oh my God, do I have a mother or father wound? And maybe heal themselves, their inner child, and maybe their connections.
Yeah, same here. I didn't do any research because I just thinking through my own personal experiences too. But I love how you're bringing attention to how you can start on this work at any age. Like, this episode hopefully is not the first time you've heard about mother and father wounds, but it's important, I think, too, to understand like where you're operating from and who and how your parents have, influenced that. So I appreciate you for sharing that. Um, yeah, I don't think I have much to add in terms of how it shows up in our community. I know that in specific instances, especially in our TikTok, I've realized that a lot of people they talk about people pleasing situations. And so I feel like in our community at least, it's put this like theme of like, well, I don't want to speak up for myself because I don't want to get someone mad or I don't want them to misunderstand. And that in itself is a huge people pleasing tendency. of not being able to stick up for yourself or for other people. And then I think along with that, I feel like a lot of people can resonate with me when I say that our parents wanted us to be the best of the best. And so us that really gave us unrealistic expectations, and that gave us really high expectations. And so I just think when you're operating from that perspective, it just doesn't really allow Hmong people, and especially like Hmong children, to be vulnerable and to actually reach out for help when they need it. So those are the things that came up to me. So, well, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really happy that you're here, and we just want to allow you to maybe comment or maybe talk about your experience too, whether on TikTok or YouTube. But this is a really important topic, so let's talk about it. Feel free to comment, subscribe, and share our videos. We are on TikTok, Insta, YouTube, and Blue Sky. Thank you.